What's going on, everybody, and welcome to this episode of Home Built Workshop. Today I am excited for this one because I have seen these things around for a while. Finally have the opportunity to check one out. What could it be, you might be asking? We are going to be taking a look and unboxing this thing. This is the Blitz Sharpening system from our friends over in Russia at TSPROF. This is cool. Stick around, check it out. Guys, really quick, before we jump into the meat and potatoes of this video, I want to be completely transparent and in full disclosure, I want to let you guys know that TSPROF did send me this sharpener to try out and review for your guys, but that's it. Any opinions that I form or anything I say during this video, that's all me. They didn't tell me to say anything specific, nothing like that. They just sent me the tool to share with you guys, and that's what we're going to do. So without further ado, let's jump right in and get this done. Now, for those of you that have been following my channel for a while, you guys have seen me sharpen quite a few different things. We've done axes, we've done lawnmower blades, we've used a bunch of different methods, files, grinders, sharpening stones, leather strops. One thing we haven't really done are things like pocket knives or maybe kitchen knives. And while you can sharpen pocket knives and kitchen knives freehand using sharpening stones, leather strops, that sort of thing, I've been a fan of some form of guided knife sharpeners for quite a while. I've been a big fan of these types of systems and have actually been using a very simple one for over 20 years. It has served me really well. I love the consistency that you get by having the blade and the angles basically fixed in place. It takes a lot of that human error out of it. So when the team over at TSPROF reached out to me, I was super excited to try out one of their products. What we have here is the Blitz Sharpening system from TSPROF. TSPROF is a Russian manufacturer of pretty cool looking sharpening systems. I've never used one, but their systems have been on my mental radar for over a year as I've heard about these in other popular brands of guided sharpening systems. So let's take a look at this. I'm really excited. Gotta make sure we get this knife nice and dull. So right here we have the Blitz Standard sharpening system. I've seen these come in different packages. I wasn't sure what kind of package this was going to arrive in. Okay. So we'll pop this thing open and see what we have. It's right away and some instructions. We'll kind of walk through at least what's in the package. I don't even know what's in here yet, so we're going to learn this together. Here we've got some sort of a handle, another piece. There's the little tool, a marker. Some stones here, looks like a coarse, medium, and a fine stone. Some sort of alcohol wipe. And here's the system itself. I'm gonna have to get the vacuum here and clean all these styrofoam thingies off. A few tools, and looks like that's it. After a quick cleanup with the vacuum to remove all of the styrofoam, I spent several minutes reading through the manual. Yes, I know, a lot of us don't like to read the manuals, but in this case, I really wanted to spend some time and understand all of the adjustments, the setup, and everything correctly before we move on. And really, here's the reason why. This is definitely the most advanced guided sharpening system I've ever used. And I don't say that as a bad thing. The one that I've been using for a very long time is very simple. This has a little more to it. There's knobs and adjustments, and I'll be right with you. All right, so after spending a little bit of time consulting the manual, making sure I understand what we have here, I think I've got all this figured out. It's really not that bad. When you look at this thing right off the bat, kind of looks complicated with knobs and dials and stuff like that, but really, it's not that hard, especially if you have any sort of experience with any other sort of guided sharpener. Really, for that matter, even if you have zero experience with anything like that, it's really not that bad. Let me show you quick what all's here before we go in and make something sharp. The kit includes a coarse, medium, and a fine grit stone. There are other ones available, but in this particular standard Blitz kit, comes with these three. This is the stone holder. This is the guide rod here. These two are going to go together. Something like that. Of course, this is your main base. This thing's pretty hefty, and it has these rubber feet on the bottom, which I really like because it really doesn't slide around. There's enough weight to it where I think it's going to be pretty stable. We'll find out shortly. This thing is going to flip up like this, and then there's a little locking tab that you can clip down there, and that locks it in place. This little bearing deal right here, which is kind of cool, this is what holds your guide rod just like that. And that is what's going to maintain your angle when you're doing your sharpening. On this side, this knob right here is where we adjust the thickness of our stone. This is a lock knob that locks the position of this wheel here. This is where we set our angle that we're going to grind to. And then one of the things I really like about this system, and really all of their systems, it appears like they have this little lever here or some form of it where you can flip over your knife. So once we get it clamped in, you need to sharpen the other side, you just flip that over. That's pretty cool. In here we have a couple Allen wrenches used for making some adjustments, as well as some replacement screws for these little clamping arms here. It also comes with this 2mm Allen wrench tool. This is actually pretty cool. I like the feel of this handle. It's like a knurled aluminum. Really, it feels kind of neat. And there is a marker in here and some alcohol pads. Those are for marking on the blade when we're setting the angle. We're going to get to that right now. I think we're going to start off with a knife that I believe is going to be pretty easy to set up just because it's a larger blade. Those of you that have been around a little while, you guys will probably have seen this one before on my channel. This is quite a few years ago. I made these new handles for this knife, but the blade is in some serious need of attention. And I think it's going to be really easy to do with this system. So we'll slip a blade into the clamps. Clamp that down so our knife is held securely. Now we can install our guide rod. You want to be very mindful of where the knife edge is as well. Don't cut yourself. We can take our abrasive. I'm starting with the coarse. And this section is spring loaded, so you can just pull that back and the abrasive holder will just clip in place. Now we need to adjust the thickness compensator to match the thickness of these stones. Now this compensator knob actually does two things. By setting it to the thickness of your stones, you're keeping this guide rod at the same angle no matter what the stone is you're using. Let's say right now I were to switch this out to a thicker stone without changing that compensator. It's going to push it up, which would effectively change the angle you're sharpening at. And by setting this to match the thickness of your stone, you're basically raising the whole thing up and not just raising it up at the end because of your stone. So that actually is keeping your angle more consistent depending on what stone you're using. But it also does something else. If you start out with a coarse grit and you sharpen your knife, and when you switch to your next grit down, say the medium grit, if you give this one click, that's going to very slightly create a micro bevel at the surface, which is kind of a little bit more advanced sharpening technique. Not really at all necessary, but it is kind of cool that you can do that as well. I'm going to set mine to 4mm, which is what I measured these diamond plates at. The graduations on here are in 0.5 millimeter increments. All the way down we're starting at 3, so there's 3.5, there's 4. Now I'm going to take our marker, and I'm going to carefully mark the very edge of this blade. There's not really a specific scale on here that tells you, yes, you're at a 17-degree angle or you're at a 25-degree angle, but there are some really cool graduations on here, and they kind of give you an idea in a range of angles that you're going to be at. If you kind of match them up to the angles specified in the book, it's going to tell you about where you're going to be. Right in here you can sort of see the graduation. It's kind of hard to get a good light on that. Looking at the book, you're going to go from 8 to 13 degrees in the first set. The second set is 13 to 18 degrees. The third set is 18 to 22, and they're kind of down in here. You can't really see them too well. The last set is 22 to 25 degrees. They do offer an additional piece that you can purchase for this system, where you can also use a magnetic digital angle finder like we use for setting our table saw blades and that sort of thing. You can set that on there and determine the angle that you're sharpening at. I might look at picking that up myself because I can definitely see where that's kind of handy. And actually, looking at their products on the website, it looks like the next level up of this, the Blitz 360, comes with that. So if that's important to you, you might look at the Blitz 360. Really, overall, I'm just going to end up matching this angle anyway, but it is kind of nice to know what the angle is you're at. I'm going to bring this down, that way I only get the tip, and we'll work our way up till we match that angle.
I'm going to just lightly touch the edge of the blade to see where we're hitting.
There we go. I'm working my way up until I take off exactly that marker edge. Once we find that angle, we just lock this guy down, and we're ready.
And now we can begin making passes across the entire length of the blade. I'm making sure that I've removed an even amount of material from the front to the back edge.
Once we've removed the marker all the way across, we need to flip the sides. This is the cool part. We're just going to flip this over carefully by squeezing the lever on the side. And now we're on the other side, and our angle is still the same.
And now we can repeat that process, sharpening this side of the blade.
Not sure, I keep pulling that out of there. See? Almost needs a little stop up there, and I'm not 100% sure that that's not an extra accessory you can buy. I'm gonna have to look into that. Every time. Once we've got the blade sharpened where we want it and we need to change grits, all we need to do is release that one. We'll switch up to the medium and we're ready to go. That quick.
And we'll finish up this blade using the fine grit diamond plate.
All right. Once we've worked our way up through the grits, it feels nice and sharp. Let's remove it. I'm looking at our edge. It looks nice. It looks nice and even. The edge feels nice and sharp, but one thing that I usually do when I'm sharpening is I take mine a little bit higher grit. This stone is just a fine stone. I usually take mine to an extra fine, and then I use a leather strop to really step it up a notch. I'll probably do the same thing to this. I don't have an extra fine stone to use here, but I will probably take the strop to this just to fine tune that edge. I just like to do that, just kind of an old habit that I'm gonna continue to do. But right now, it's nice and sharp. Totally a super usable edge right there. That would cut anything in the kitchen, I think, that you needed to. Let's move on and try a different blade. Let's see how it works with a much smaller blade. So when we go to put this blade in, right away we kind of run into a problem where these are a little bit too far apart. But it's not really a problem, we just have to make one modification. We're going to loosen this, bring our angle all the way up. We'll pull the lever over here, turn this halfway, and now we can remove that clamp, and there's another set of holes down here. We'll do the same on the other side. I can lock that back in place, and now we can put our blade in here and have plenty of room to clamp it down. Now you don't have to bring them both in. If moving only one fits the blade you're working on, then by all means you only have to move one, but for this one we're moving both. We'll swap back to the coarse stone, slip that in there, do our marker. And I'm going to make the angle steep again, just so I don't mar up the rest of the blade. Now, one thing that I noticed here is that with a small blade and this set to 4 millimeters, we're still making contact here. And I did double check with the team at TSPROF, and this is normal on a smaller blade. You may encounter this. All we need to do is increase this until we don't make contact with this piece. And really that's just because the point of your blade is so close. And then you just proceed with your normal setup. All right, and now right there, we're removing all of the marker. Now I'll lock down the locking nut so our angle can't change, and with everything locked in place, now we'll just work our way up through the grits and get this knife sharp. This one's got a little nick on the very tip, so I gotta spend just a few more strokes on there just to try to get that nick out. That's something you want to try to do, especially while you're on your coarse grit. If you're seeing any imperfections in your blade, not just with this sharpening system, but even if you're doing it by hand with a whetstone or something like that, use your coarse side to remove most of the material. Get all of those imperfections out. I'm kind of looking back and forth in the light. I'm watching the reflection on there. And I do this again, not just with a system like this. Even if I'm touching it up with a little stone, I'm looking in the light reflection, making sure that I get that whole bevel from front to back, but making special sure that you get the tip, the very edge. And you guys can probably tell, I'm not pulling this out of the end at all really with this smaller blade. I think that other one was, just because the blade is so wide, you have to pull it a lot farther. That's why I was pulling it out of there. It's really, I think, operator error. I really like that you can quick change these just that quick. It's really kind of cool. The other system that I'm very familiar with, you have like different rods that you need to swap out, and it's not horrible. This is quicker. See the shine coming in on this fine stone. Nice. Got a nice edge. We don't have to worry about using the alcohol pads that are included to remove the marker. If you got a little bit carried away and you still had some marker left on there, you could just use one of these alcohol pads to remove that. Now I've got a nice new sharp blade. Now I can go chop some things for dinner. This kind of a system would work great for really about anything. Now, one thing that I did want to try was doing a hand plane blade, but the limit of the blade width is about 25 millimeters, and really that first knife that I did was about 28 or so, so I think that's why I was having issues pulling this out of this bearing. But I did check the TSPROF website, and they do sell a limit piece that you put on here, little locking screw to keep that from happening. I might have to get one of those because that's kind of a pain, and that would make it a lot nicer. But again, I believe that was user error. I was using a blade that was a little over the limits of this thing. 25 millimeters is what they recommend being the maximum. Stuff like these, pocket knives, any of that sort of thing, awesome. Again, I wanted to try a hand plane, but unless you had a really small hand plane blade that you could fit in there, the larger ones just wouldn't work. Also on the TSPROF website, they sell a ton of extra stones, tons of different grits. They even do have a leather stropping one, basically the same exact thing, but it has leather on there. I might have to try to get one of those as well, or maybe make one. They also have different stone holders. This one takes specifically these that have this 45-degree angle on here, but you can also get the universal holder, which will hold all different kinds of them. Right now, this system will only hold these with a 45-degree bevel on there, but they have tons of different models. This is the standard Blitz. They also have one that's called the 360, as well as some other more in-depth models and kits available. But for the Blitz Standard, this thing is working really good we've got some nice edges on here. It's a very nice build quality, it really is. The machining is all beautifully done, just works nice. There's not really any play in anything that I can tell so far. All of the detents and all of that sort of stuff are nice and solid. There is one little bit of maintenance we need to do really quick, just to make sure this thing stays running nice and smooth. Hopefully you guys can see this little rubber dealio right here. That's the technical term. That's a little oil hole. We need to pull that little oil cap off of there. Don't lose that. And we'll just put a little drop of oil down in there periodically. It doesn't say how often or anything like that, but it does say to put some oil down in there. I'm just going to use a drop or two of this light machine oil, basically a sewing machine oil. We'll just put a couple drops down in there. Replace the little rubber stopper. Whoops. There we go. And now we're back in business. Yeah, I hope you guys can get a good look at this thing here. The machining is really nice. This is a really nice work here. Here's our compensator knob. Very solid and tactile clicks. I like that. And down here you can see Blitz right there. And when you're all done, you can flip this lock up, fold that up to store it away. There's just a couple more specs that I'd like to cover just before we wrap this up, just so you guys kind of have an idea of some of the sizes of knives and things that you can put in here. These clamps will hold a knife with a spline thickness of about 4.5 millimeters. That's according to the specs in the book. So if it's 4.5 millimeters or less, you should have no problem clamping that in here. I know, we're talking millimeters again. For blade length, you can go from about 30 to 200 millimeters in length. That's around 8 inches. I don't think I have really too many blades that are much bigger than that. Maybe some of the super large kitchen knives would be a little bigger than that, but 200 millimeters, for me, that's going to be perfect. And like I already mentioned, the width can only be 25 millimeters, so there you have it. So you can still do some pretty good sized blades in there. This thing is going to cover all of your pocket knives, EDC knives, hunting knives, probably most, if not all, of your kitchen knives. At least it will for me. It's going to work out just fine. So what do you think, guys? This was kind of fun. You guys have seen me sharpen stuff. I've even got a whole playlist of sharpening different things. In fact, this will be added to it as well. I really do like this kit, and honestly, it's not just because they sent it to me. I really have been a fan, like I said, of guided knife sharpening systems. I've been using them forever. I want to hear from you down below in the comments. Let me know your thoughts. Maybe you've used a system like this. Maybe you've used a different brand. What are your thoughts on a guided knife sharpening system? Also, I do want to encourage everybody, head on over to the TSPROF website. Take a look at all of their stuff. They got some really cool things there. There is a link to their website down in the video description. Hit that up, take a look at all their things, and if you want one, go ahead and pick one up while you're at it. If you do make a purchase and you're in the US, they have a shipping center. I believe it's in Michigan, so you don't have to wait for shipping from Russia. I can't say where they come from for other countries. It may come from Russia. I'm not really sure, but I know here in the US it does come out of Michigan, so you can save a ton of shipping times as well as whatever duties and taxes. You don't have to worry about that. It comes out of Michigan, so that's kind of cool. So thanks a lot for watching, guys. I really hope you enjoyed it, and also a huge shout out to TSPROF. Thank you guys so much for giving me the opportunity to try this out. I really appreciate it. Thanks a lot, and we'll see you next time. I like this angle right here. I'm feeling very up close and personal with you guys.